Welcome to God of Run. This is Will Sanchez. Thank you for tuning in. My special guest today is Etsu Taniguchi. Etsu is a member of Team Veselka, a cycling team. It's a great team because I love the way they look on their bikes. I met Etsu 10 years ago because Facebook told me, where we were both ambassadors for the Polar watches. I'm honored to have Etsu as a guest.
Thank you, Will, for having me today. I'm very honored.
It's a pleasure. Like I mentioned, Facebook is a phenomenal thing. It popped up with the picture. You were next to these beautiful young ladies because you were a soccer coach for them. Facebook proudly says, you're friends for 10 years. Congratulations.
It's been that long.
Time flies.
Yes.
And we were both ambassadors for the watchmaker, Polar. I think that was the last year they had ambassadors, where we promoted their watches both to the stores and, we held workshops, and it was very interesting. 10 years ago in the summertime, and you were obviously representing the cycling version of the watch, and I was representing the running aspects of the watch. But I don't wear a Polar anymore. I wear a Garmin. This is actually my first Garmin. When they came out with this rectangular version, it's called Vivo Active, I believe. I just love the look of it. I noticed you're not wearing a watch. When you're cycling, what do you wear?
Because when I'm cycling, I have a Garmin on my bicycle, and more often than not, I don't really look at the time. It's in terms of time of the day. It's more about how long I've been on the bike, and I've ridden long enough to know if I've gone for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. So I don't really need a watch when I'm riding a bicycle. And when I'm not riding a bicycle, I stopped wearing a watch because A, it's heavy. 2, I tend to lose things, and 3, since I travel a lot for work, it gives me an opportunity to sort of break up the monotonous and ask random people what time it is. And also in today's world, there's clock everywhere in airport streets, on my iPhone.
That's true. Your iPhone.
Yeah. So I'm nothing to worry about.
Interesting. So you left your Polar behind.
I left a year after we did the promotion together.
I love that time period. And as I mentioned, you were coaching a soccer team. So you must be depressed. Not depressed. You're decompressing now that the World Cup is over.
Yes. Talk about Facebook. I just wrote this morning or last night that I needed a vacation because I was exhausted from following all the matches. Yes.
All right. There's one question. My wife and I were watching I guess it was a commercial. And apparently after a player makes a score, they slide across the field. The question we had, how come they don't burn up their knees doing that? What's the secret of sliding across the field and look so cool?
Well, first of all, not everyone does that. And secondly, it's not always done on every terrain. I mean, that could be done on a beautiful grass field where the professionals play. But in a lot of the fields that we play these days where it's artificial grass, I don't think we'll see too many athletes doing that.
So AstroTurf is not
It's not a good place now.
Oh, so when they do, it's on grass?
Yes, I would say good 100% close to it's on grass.
Okay. Now you also mentioned the Team Veselka. I mean, all the teams wear their costumes, very well. I mean, that's one of the things runners are jealous about the cycling clubs, because you got the best uniforms. You guys just look like gods and goddesses on those bikes. They probably won't hear that too often from runners, but we say that. Yeah. Says, wow, look at those guys. They really look cool. And especially when you're biking so close together like fish, you're just wondering, how comes you guys don't crash as often? Because you're really very skilled, especially in Central Park when you're in a pack like that. So when I Googled Veselka, I get the restaurant. So what is the relationship between Team Veselka and I guess the Ukrainian restaurant Veselka?
Yes. To put it simply, the restaurant or the diner that's open 24/7 in East Village is our main and title sponsor of my cycling team. And they have been generously sponsoring us, I guess, as a title sponsor for the last 3 years, I think.
Uh-huh.
But prior to that, they were a secondary sponsor for another 3 years. So we've had a very long relationship with the restaurant.
Oh, okay. And that's probably the place to go for your celebratory.
We go there from May to August. We go there every Tuesday as a group or with other fellow cyclists to celebrate after we race out in Brooklyn, whether we do well or not.
Probably more often than not, you do well.
as a matter of fact, yes.
Okay, because I've seen, a lot of third place winners or third place and second place. So also that uniform that you're wearing that says Veselka on it, that's only been around for 3 or 4 years.
In terms of as a title sponsor, yes. It's
So
only been 3
what did
years.
it say before? It had Veselka
Before
blasted.
that, it was a shipping company called FGX, and before that, it was a beverage company, which was started by the musician Moby called Teeny. And before that, it was a online marketing firm called Avenue A Razorfish. Now I think they're just called Razorfish.
I heard of that name. They're a consulting company?
Media, like
A media.
media related online.
Okay. Let's introduce you to our audience. Tell us where you were born and something about your growing up years.
I was born in Japan, and some 6 months later, my family moved to Brazil, and then to the Philippines, and came back to Japan when I was 4, and then to Switzerland, and then to Argentina, and back to Japan when I was, I believe, 14, and then to the U.S. when I was 17. Pretty much, other than a year or two there, I've been pretty much in the U.S. since.
Okay, all right. Your passport must be interesting as a child. I mean, you needed a passport to do all that traveling, right?
Yes,
Even
yes,
if you were a
yes,
youngster.
yes.
Okay.
I had a diplomatic passport until I was 18 because of my father's career. And now I have both Japanese and a U.S. passport, which I
Oh,
sort of
okay. Okay, so your
randomly
father was a
reuse.
diplomat, and that's why he was
Yes.
traveling.
Yes.
Oh, that's fascinating. So as a youngster, what kind of sports activities did you get into?
I would say my first sport was baseball, something that I really wanted to pursue. And I was pretty good at it, as a matter of fact. I remember playing for little leagues in Switzerland among other American students. And while all the other kids were 14, 16, 17, I think I was the only 12-year-old kid. And I remember my father standing in the stands and yelling at me and yelling at the coach not to make me pitch. Because my father was also a very serious baseball player, but he hurt his shoulders from pitching too much in college. So he didn't want me to go through the same pattern. So he really wanted me to reserve my shoulders. And while he and I would play catch on during his free time, if any of my balls that I threw at him took any dip or curve or slide, he would come in and scold at me because he really didn't want me to mess with my wrist or my elbows.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, in Switzerland, of all places. I mean, baseball's very big in Japan,
But
obviously.
in Switzerland, especially in the mid 70s, it was I wouldn't even say it's minor. I don't think it existed other than among the American kids. So obviously in Europe, then and also today, the most important and popular sport is it's soccer or football over there. And obviously, as a 5th grade kid, everyone else is playing soccer, so I had to play, but I didn't really know how to even kick a ball. And I said to myself, well, if I play the goalkeeper, that's like touching a ball, like baseball. Maybe I'll start playing goalkeeper, and that's how I got into the sports.
Interesting. In Japan?
No, this is in Switzerland.
Because you were going to school there?
Yes, because I went to international school there. So I started playing goalkeeper until I broke my finger twice in a year. And the doctor finally said that I should perhaps switch to playing on the field.
Uh-huh.
But by then, I'm 13, 14, and then my family moved to Argentina, where everyone played soccer. I mean,
that's right.
Everyone.
That's the only sport.
That's the only sport. And this was back in '79, a year after Argentina had won their first World Cup. So obviously soccer is booming. Maradona, who had, who I guess everyone knows, had just surfaced as a professional. And yes, during the summertime, since I went to American school, I was involved in Little League, playing baseball, but for the most part, it was soccer. And it was a big adjustment. I mean, by the time you're 13, everyone really plays well. And here I am, show up, and I'm getting hard to kick a ball in a straight line.
Well, obviously, your game just shot up because now you're playing against people that were much better than you. You were learning the ropes.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I would spend hours, sometime after school, hitting a ball against the wall over and over and over, so I could master the basic technique. It was a lot of work
I think it paid off because you also became a student of the game. You were able to share your knowledge when you came back to the States.
Well, yes. The whole soccer coaching thing, I got into it by an accident. I I had moved to New York in 1991, working for an investment bank, and I was involved in playing for an amateur team, and I had hurt myself, sprained my ankle
Playing soccer.
playing soccer. And as I was going through rehab, I was trying to find a way to get back into the sport again. And I saw in the West Village an old field where there are all syringes and all beat up field, where a handful of women were playing, maybe 5 or 7 of them. And I thought, oh, well, if they'll let me kick a ball around and it'll be good for my rehab. So I went and I kicked the ball with them. I gave them a few tips here and there. And one of the women had asked me to coach for them because they were looking for a coach. So that's how I started. But I had very little experience as a coach, and I have to admit, everything I know about coaching, everything I know about the tactical part of the game, I learned it from my from head coach that I assisted for the New York State team.
Okay.
He's an Italian gentleman who played professionally in the world's some of the top clubs before he moved to the U.S.
Okay.
And he's still coaching. But even to this day, if there's something tactical element of the game that I like to know, I like to clarify, he's the first person that I go to.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That
I owe him everything about what I know about soccer and how I see the game, yes.
All right. Now, you mentioned that you went to school in the United States. What school did you go to?
High school, I went to a boarding school just outside of Boston called Northfield Mount Hermon School.
Uh-huh.
I think runners, there's gentlemen like Frank Shorter.
Oh.
Yeah, he went there, among other athletes. And university, I went to Brown University.
And what did you study there?
I studied international relations, and I minored in photography, but I'm not a good photographer.
International relations. I'm sure your pop was happy that you were into that field. Perhaps, become a diplomat. We are a diplomat of sorts because soccer is the universal sport. And cycling, of course, you eventually got into that big time with Team Veselka. That's also an international sport.
I think majoring in international relations was sort of always, it became very natural to me because of the daily conversation I would have at home with my parents. And,
Okay.
and
That must have been interesting. I guess current events and stuff going on, and with the United States, with Japan, and so forth and so on. Geez, I can imagine some of the conversations you would be having with your father in today's environment.
yeah, there's some. I mean, there's some definitely interesting stuff that he shared with me.
Was there anything else you want to share about your father? How did he influence? Obviously he's a big influence with you. You tell the story where he watched you play baseball, and so forth.
The biggest lesson, not that I follow always, but I always have it back in my mind, is that he used to always say, call a spade. Don't beat around the bush. Don't make things up. Say things as you see them, or as they are. And I think as a diplomat, I've seen him come home with at times tremendous stress, especially during the Gulf War. Now that he's gone, perhaps maybe I can share the story. But I remember back in 1991 when the attack by Saddam Hussein was imminent. He at the time was the Japanese ambassador in Israel, and he had 2 choices. One was to leave, close up the embassy, and go home, and the other was to leave the embassy open. But either way, it posed a tremendous risk, because if you left the embassy open, if the Scud missiles hit the wrong place, they'll all be gone. But on the other hand, if he, as a head of the representative from the Japanese government, shut down the embassy, which also meant that we were giving up on our relationship with Israel. And the Japanese government had a very difficult time deciding what to do. So I think he finally put his foot down and said, okay, we're going to leave the embassy open. But what he did was he sent everyone home, all the wives and the secretaries and the admin folks, except himself, the minister and the counselor and the local staff. He physically shut down the embassy, I believe, which was it was in Tel Aviv, but he made his residence the Japanese embassy.
Uh-huh.
So in every room, he sent me a picture of that one day. He had 2 gas masks in every room. Every window was taped up, and he had 3 live telephone lines. One line connected directly to, at the time, Prime Minister Shamir's office. One line connected directly to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Japan, and then a third line for personal line. And when Scud missiles hit Israel the first time, I was very worried. I think I saw the news on Reuters in my office. And about an hour later, my phone rings. I pick up, and it's my father. I was like, Dad, where are you? How are you doing? And he kind of laughed on the other side and said,
Yeah.
Oh, we're fine. And I asked him where he was, and he said he was a third floor basement office of Prime Minister Shamir's staff,
Okay.
and talking about what was happening or what could happen.
Yeah.
And he passed away almost 10 years ago. I think it'll be 10-year anniversary this November. Up until a few years ago, my mother would still get holiday greeting cards from those folks in Israel, thanking my father for taking a decision to stand by the Israeli folks.
Okay.
And I've had to write myself, every one of them, thanking them for the letter, but that my father was no longer with us.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, some people have ceremonies. They'll burn the letters, put it in a balloon so it can
Right.
reach the heavens. I don't know if that's a peculiar thing for any specific religion, but I'm sure you have your ceremonies and your stuff like that.
But I think in our case, we tend to keep things around. So I think I have pretty much all those letters that my father received somewhere in my suitcase at home.
Okay. Well, when you write the book, you have the documentation there. That's so fascinating. So you said you were at the office. So when this was going on, you were working here in New York, or where?
Yes, I was working at the World Trade Center on the 96th floor.
Oh
for
my gosh,
Japanese
what year was
investment
that?
bank.
This is a few years before.
This is 91, 92.
Interesting, because 9/11,
Yes, I was already gone from World Trade
okay.
Center. Yeah.
You're very, very active with Team Veselka. So when did the cycling really become important for you?
It started almost 15 years ago. It all started, again, go back to my father. My father suffered a stroke, and I had watched him try to learn how to teach himself how to walk, how to crawl, how to use his hands. And I thought, what can I do to share the similar experience? And he was living in Japan, I was living in New York. There's not much we had in common at that point. And I said to myself, well, I want to do something that's physically challenging for me, so that I could perhaps somewhere I can relate to the pain that my father is feeling. And so I randomly dove into triathlons. That's how I got into the whole cycling thing. And then I realized after 2-3 years of swimming and riding and running, cycling was something that I enjoyed the most. And I happened to come across a number of friends that I made riding around Central Park and across the bridge, George Washington Bridge, New Jersey side. I made some friends, and they invited me to join this novice team, or team that was designed for novice rider like myself. And that was about 13 years ago, I think.
Okay, you were a newbie back then.
I was a newbie, yes, and that's the whole cycling thing started for me.
Okay, that's how it started. As a way to honor your father in your own unique way.
I suppose, that's how it started. Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. But did that become then Team Veselka at some point?
No, well, and again, so that I rode for that novice team for a year, and a couple of friends and I decided that we should probably do something on our own, and so that's when we got Razorfish to sponsor us for first 2 years, and then Teeny, and then FGX, and then 2 years ago. Yeah.
And then you got the restaurant.
Yes.
The restaurant, of course, is famous for its comfort food, its pierogies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a staple in New York, and I think they just celebrated 60th anniversary a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I saw a recent movie, Ocean's
8, yes.
And they're right there. My wife and I saw Veselka was there at the window.
And right around the same time, I think Anthony Bourdain also had filmed.
Oh, one of his episodes.
One of his episodes. It's only the last 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. As we know, he passed away.
Yes.
Suicide, I think. It's just awful. Geez, if only he went just to go to the restaurant and have some comfort food, it could have been
Yeah.
a big difference.
The owner of the restaurant, Tom, will occasionally share things with me, but I think there are a lot of celebrities in disguise that visit Veselka. Some of them, I think, on a daily basis. So it really is a landmark
It is,
in New York City, and I think we're very, very lucky to have such an old, established place, not just sponsor our team, but as a restaurant, really support the cycling community. I mean, I know the restaurant's involved in transportation alternative, they're involved in various cycling projects, and I think we're lucky as a local team to have them as a
Is the owner
sponsor.
himself a cyclist?
He's a cyclist, yeah. He commutes every day.
By bike?
By bicycle, yeah. He has, I think he might have more bikes than I do. He has a number of road bikes. He also has Brompton. His wife, his kids also ride bicycles.
Oh, that's so cool. And then recently, you guys honored, and I love the fact that as the running community, the cycling community, very much is into camaraderie and helping fellow members. I'm talking about Edie Perkins.
Yes.
He had a recent 5K in Prospect Park, and you guys were sponsors, and I think Veselka made special brownies. I think it said Edie on them.
That was all Tom's idea, but yes.
So tell us about, I guess you have 3 core principles, the racing, the training, and the camaraderie.
Oh, you did your homework, yes. Yeah.
Which is great, that it's part of your mission statement. You made sure that you get together and socialize.
Well, I think I've learned from my father that things are not always black and white. And secondly, I think I learned from my soccer coach, the Italian gentleman, that it's important in order to win, to be successful, you have to have the players. So in cycling's case, you have to have the riders. But I think in life, in order to be successful, you have to have good people. And different people have different definition of good people. But for me, I define them as someone that's open, that's kind, understanding, and also that's committed to all of that, but also committed to the competition of sport. I guess the main principle in which I decided the 3 pillars, because as you know, well, living in New York, you have the career, you have all the extracurricular activities, you have sort of various interests, and different people on different time schedules, and it'll be impossible for me to ask my teammates to commit to all the racing, all the training, all the socializing. So I decided to create the 3 pillars in which any one of my teammates can ideally do all of them all the time, but somehow balance that.
Yeah, it is a balancing. You have to discover it your own way.
Yeah.
But it's always helpful to have friends and mentors and so forth to sort of guide you. Another thing I love about Team Veselka, the way you guys rallied around Edie. In fact, her personality is such that it seems like any club she was part of, they immediately embraced her and made her family.
Absolutely.
Because every club was represented there. Urban Athletics, Coach Kane was there, the Dashing Whippets, and you guys had a big banner, and the Edie Brownies, of course.
I think for me, Edie, everything I said about a good person, Edie represents, whether it's her commitment to the sports, or the excellence of the sports, commitment to the team, how she used to socialize with us, train with us, would always have the first and the biggest smile, even after the hardest workout.
Well, as you know, I had her here after her awful accident, after she had the race for Edie in Prospect Park, and she hasn't lost her smile.
Yeah.
She lit up the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
she's very special.
She is. We saw that, broke our heart. She needed help to cross her legs when she sat with us for the interview. But she was so positive and so loving about you guys. I mean, she was telling wonderful stories about your team, about the friendship, and the fact that you guys got together and gave her that bike that she's now done 1.5 marathon on, and she's hoping to do more with it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's done so much in such a short amount of time.
She's a fighter.
Whatever she touches, you want to be part of it. So if Team Veselka was part of her life, that speaks extremely well of both of you and Edie.
We're honored to have her as a team member and a friend.
So I want to thank you on behalf of the running community, what you do as a cycling community.
Thank you.
Sometimes the running and the cycling gets in each way because, we want to share the road.
Almost every day, but yes.
Oh, I want to talk about your work now. You used to work with FedEx, but now I see you're involved with video something.
Video research. In a nutshell, we're the Nielsen of Japan. We provide ratings and whatnot for different medias and customized research and different.
So you represent the New York office. You run the New York office.
I pretty much cover U.S. Well, anything outside of Japan is what I cover.
Oh, that's so fascinating because that field has gotten so complicated because the millennials are cutting the cord.
Yes.
And people are watching media on their smartphones. So if you guys solve the problem, how do you track what's being watched on the
No one has solved the problem, I'm afraid. It's because there's just too many options that's rising almost every day, and no one seems to be able to keep track of that. But I think the most important thing is that I've learned in the past few years is that the industry as a whole has to come to a consensus as to what is going to be measured and what is going to be the currency. Once that's done, everything else will resolve itself. But until that's done, we're still struggling, we're still quite of a way.
Well, that's an exciting field to be in because that'll keep your brain going. You keep you young forever because I used to consult with Nielsen.
Okay.
And it was totally fascinating how they break up a day and how they kept track of things. It was mind-boggling, constantly learning, constantly upgrading. So you're in a great field.
So let's hope I stay healthy and alive. It can be a very stressful environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then athletically speaking, what's some of the challenges you have for yourself?
You mentioned earlier about being crashed, being in an accident. I was involved in a crash about a month ago, so I'm still recovering from that.
You're going to make a full recovery?
Oh yes, I think so. I don't know about my head, but we'll see. I don't have much of. I guess for me now, the season's almost over. I'd like to see myself finish racing season in a healthy body, but I have a lot of talented teammates, both men and women, young and old, and they're still aggressively racing. And whenever they win or they make top 10 or a podium, that makes me happy. So if I could be a support to them, that's great. I guess that would be my big goal.
Excellent. Well, on that note of having goals, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Will. Thank you.